What I'd like to do tonight is bring together a kind of, I guess you'd say a skillful means, something like a practice, and it's something like a koan, both, which some of you have taken up and some of you have heard at other times. It is a deeply familiar companion to practice. It's a kind of ultimate ground of practice, the state it opens up. And it is simply these words that are offered to whatever is arising. It is you, not named, just the intimate you, whatever is arising, are welcome here. You are welcome here. Which of course is confirming you are welcome here. The welcome is mutual. At every point it's offered. When we do not go forward to what is happening, but welcome it, then the world can open to us. Then reality can show its true face. And this is a gradual process which we might be able to explore tonight. But I want to bring it alongside a quite outrageous offer that Sui Feng, who his dates are 822 to 908, so an old Tang Dynasty chant master. He said this, he said, the whole world is you. Yet you keep thinking it is something else. The whole world is you. Yet you keep thinking it is something else, something other. So the process of you are welcome here is a kind of resolving of the koan, of the apparent other, the apparent otherness. The apparent sense we have that I'm in here, it's out there, possibly threatening. Certainly not making my life altogether easy, which of course is all that I want for myself. Picking and choosing, in other words, that holds the world at bay, holds the moment at bay, makes sure it's not lived. If we're dreaming of something other, something else, we're not here. There's a beautiful phrase, original dwelling place, which really is the completely at home reality where we are. But it's not our dream of where we are. It's the awake of where we are. It's the alive of where we are. So the whole world is you, yet you keep thinking it is something else. And how will you let yourself in? And who is holding you back? Who's holding you back? And what is it like without that one holding you back? This is the path of waking up, right where we are. So what is it like without that one in the way, the one who is constructing, busily constructing and repairing the construction as you go of who this is and what this is, the way we make ourselves up. What's it like without the one who makes ourselves up? When we're bare, even naked of that. Well, the Polish poet Anna Swier has a beautiful, simple evocation of this in just 2 lines. Her poem is called A Double Rapture. So keep in mind, this is a state of rapturous joy, that she's expressing here when she says, because there is no me, and because I feel how much there is no me. Because there is no me, that's the first great joy. And the double rapture, the answering sort of rush of that realization, is because I feel how much there is no me, how much of this no me there is. Limitless, limitless. Now this is possibly something that happened to her suddenly. There's a sense in which realization comes to us sometimes very, very suddenly. It used to be called sudden realization, and it was considered to be superior to gradual realization. There's some picking and choosing. So forget sudden, forget gradual. Who can tell them apart in the end? But here's a sense of what that suddenness might be like. She's expressing the sudden and complete falling away of self here, just as a matter of great joy. There's a way of understanding the strangeness of how close this is all the time, and how touching it can be a sudden falling away. And this story actually comes from the Mathnawi, Rumi's Mathnawi. So a Sufi kind of koan master, you might say. And he tells the story of the man farmer, a very humble, modest human being, who simply goes out to the barn to check on his ox. He doesn't take a lantern. He's so familiar with the way, it's probably got a path through the weeds where his feet always go across to the barn, and he knows exactly how to open the barn door. He can already feel the warm, breathing body of this great ox in the dark. His dear ox. He loves his ox. So familiar. So warm, such a solid flank this ox has. And all the time, a lion has eaten his ox and is standing in the place of the ox. So he is feeling the shoulder of the lion, and he has no idea what he is touching. And of course, the implication here is at the moment that he noticed and saw and sensed something a bit strange about this ox. Then his world shatters, his presuppositions shatter. He's touching, from Rumi's point of view, he's touching God. He's touching the absolute. He's touching the wholeness of what is beyond description, beyond words. That which is intimate only to the mind that comes empty-handed, not knowing. So his knowing that he's touching the ox prevents him from touching and knowing he's touching the lion, from realizing. Now that would be the most complete sudden realization that you could probably engineer for yourself. Touching a lion in the dark of the barn. But in the meantime, there is the so-called gradual, just the sense of it gradually grows into our bones, it mineralizes our bones, these small realizations that come to us. Some of them are sharp and beautiful, some of them are just so obvious we wonder, how did I miss this all along for so long? It's so plain to see. It's strange we cannot and must take so long to see it. So there's a case that explores this as a matter of, well, in a way of rapture, of love, because I hope you can hear the love flowing through that double rupture. Because there is no me, and because I feel how much there is no me. She's in love. She's beyond in love. She's gone. gone to the other shore, so to speak. But in this case, somebody comes to their teacher. His name is Daopi, the elder. And the student comes asking, slightly self-importantly perhaps, maybe guardedly, you'll probably detect a bit of picking and choosing in his words. He says, and he's quoting words, so he's keeping himself safe. These aren't quite his words, but he's presenting them. He says, I do not love what ordinary people love, worldly people love. Then he says, that's the end of the quote. And then he says, I wonder, Your Reverence, what is it that you love? What is it that you love? And this is a valuable question. I mean, it can be the fuse that runs through, the lit fuse that runs through your practice, if you let it. The question, what is it that I love? Which will keep on opening up and opening up. I talked this morning about tenderness, and I just want to emphasize again, this is a tender path. It opens to our tenderness. You didn't hear me? Okay. It opens up to our tenderness. It doesn't open up to our fear. It doesn't open up to our bargaining. Tenderness is not bargaining. It's an open state. It's very close to you are welcome here. So, the Dalpi has to respond to this question, what it is that you love. And what he says, as is often the case with a koan, because koans do not concede a single thing, that is the cases of direct encounter that koans are drawn from. These turning words do not concede a single thing to the linear mind that is seeking to claim and, in a way, to coerce reality in secret service to the self, in fact. They turn that around completely. They do not make it possible to be in that coercive, linear state. They're much more like this radiant, open hand. So it comes somewhat unexpectedly, you could say, around the corner, the response. And Darpi responds, I already have become like this. Like this. Now this is the word that is used to refuse any kind of delineation, any kind of carving out something from the whole of what is. In fact, it points to the whole of what is, this. Just as it is presenting in every detail, every particle of matter, each moment. It's presenting completely. Nothing is hidden. So what is he saying when he says, I already have become like this? What do you hear in that? Does he sound conceited? Is he making a claim of some special status? Or is it actually a deeply conceding statement? I have already conceded myself over and over to just this. And when I first worked with this case years ago, what came to mind for me was the stones that are rounded by water at the bottom of a river. You know, those beautiful rounded stones there. Some of them are like eggs. They look very, very they draw your eye. They're very beautiful. But the point about it is they are rounded. They once would have been all kinds of shapes. But now they have the roundness of circumstance. They have completely become like this, like they have conceded their original shape or various shapes to the way that stone yields to water and the way that water yields to stone. So can you say water, stone after a while? You have something that is a full expression of stone and water at once. Become like this, hard to tell apart from this. You can almost imagine Elder the Tao Pi almost fading into the walls. God, now you see him. Now, did I see him or not? He's so like this. So, this is this sense of intimacy here. Intimate with conditions, intimate with himself, so intimate with reality that there's no other. No other. I remember a student in a retreat near San Francisco once where I was teaching. And she came in after walking among the redwoods and that were outside. The place was called St. Dorothy's Rest. I remember. Anyway, she was at this camp where we were camping out in sort of eternity, in a way, as we are here. She came in and into the house, and she was in a state, a little bit like because there is no me, that kind of state. And all she could say, and these are actually words, she actually asked, and I like this detail, she asked the women's toilet for some advice. Now, the women's toilet had, it had a particular, let's call it a perfume, that resided in the walls. It just did their timber walls, and they held the scent, this scent of pea, so to speak. So she asked that intimate, direct matter, what can I say about this? And the words that came to her were, no other. Already she was in a kind of state of no other. She found her dear friend right there in the scent of pea. No pushing it away. Just complete like this. She was like this. She was so like her circumstances, it was hard to tell her apart. So those were the words that allowed her to speak about her experience among the redwoods, where she began to feel she could see right through them, right through the actual great solid trunks of the redwoods. It's like they shimmered in and out of what they seemed to be. They felt as though they were letting her in, low, hard surface. So perhaps that's a hint of this sense of the word intimacy. That is a very quiet Zen word that is used about this state of not opposing, of welcoming what is, of becoming intimate, more intimate with reality, and of course reality becoming more intimate with you. It's mutual, all the way down, mutual. So you can hear this sense of self-giving way, and allowing a kind of reunion, even with the most difficult and shameful and sorrowful or awkward, these sometimes painfully shaped matters that we prefer that were not part of our life, or that we could disown in some way. When Fayan said not knowing is most intimate, he left nothing out. Everything is the door of complete intimacy. Every single thing. And so to become like this, it's to become more rounded. And last night I spoke about equanimity. And this is surely this rounded state, this state that has, in no strong sense, any other, nothing being opposed. It is actually your original dwelling place, this mind that is completely poised right there. Your original home is the exact life you have, unopposed, welcomed. So it is interesting to think about dropping the fight with what is, becoming like this, like whatever is manifesting right now, the this that is manifesting for you. It might be as simple as the feeling of water as you wash your hands. As one hand washes the other, you can't even tell which is which and which is water, and that kind of rounded feeling that starts to come more easily after some days of meditation. So equanimity, upekkha in Sanskrit, is effectively it's the foundation of the other three faces of what the Buddha called the four immeasurables. He's really talking about love. And he's finding the foundation, or we can surely find the foundation of the first three in the final one. So the first is the one that we explored a bit in encouraging words this morning, the Metta Sutta, loving kindness, metta. And that's a kind of unqualified friendliness. Indeed, it's very close to you are welcome here. Seems to be the kind of sentence that would arise from loving kindness. The second one is, in a sense, not quite as obviously fiery or warm or radiant. It is radiant, but in a different way. That's karuna, compassion. And maybe we'll be able to talk some more about compassion tomorrow, explore that in different ways tomorrow. The third one is mudita, and that's joy in the happiness of others. Joy, taking joy in the joy of others. So freely sharing that feeling, well, why didn't that happen to me? Which is, of course, the way we sabotage our own joy. So mudita is this open state of joy, actually, joy shared with others. Just as compassion is a kind of transitive state, freely passing across, so is this mudita. And so what underlies all of them, what is the foundation of all three, is this state of equanimity. And it is actually a kind of something I think we are charged with. It is a deep human charge to discover equanimity. Not only that, it is a deeply charged energy, a very powerful presence when it is present. In a way, the story last night is an example of that equanimity. When a knife is stuck in your ribs and you say, oh, well, this is a very interesting state of affairs, and proceed from there, curious, interested. Actually, in another different way, which gives another clue about equanimity, there was a moment when Rabina Corton, remember the Buddhist monk who, she's a woman who has worked hard with her own anger. Anger has been her sort of dear enemy, has helped wake her up. And she was once with her sister in New York, coming out of a music club or event like that. And suddenly then a man stepped out of the shadows, put a knife to her throat and said, give me your money. She had her sister beside her, who was immediately fumbling for whatever she could find to give the man. But Rabina said, "No, you give me your money." She presented a kind of immediate mirror to the man of the totality and also the, in a way, absurdity of the demand. And it stopped him. He saw himself in some way. And he kind of backed off, looking quite curious, and disappeared back into the shadows, walked away. But I think there's something discerning in that moment. It was not a moment of lacking in compassion. She actually found a way to something richer and deeper in that man, a way for him to catch sight of it. She also turned with the moment, turned things while turning with the moment she was in. So, let's look a little bit more at the question of finding this original home in the kind of deeply uncertain world and life that we're in. So is it some kind of lovely place of bliss apart from the deeply uncertain world and life we're in? No, of course not. In a way, it's more extraordinarily ordinary than that. You know, the ordinary is extraordinary the moment you stop to notice that it is. And it is home. Home is the place exactly where you are at every point. No, it can't be elsewhere. Keep in mind Sui Feng's words. The whole world is you. Yet you keep thinking it is something else, something other. And so Linji gave an interesting offer. He said, if you take if wherever you are, whatever is happening, you take the role of host, then whatever spot you stand in will be a true one. So the role of host, the role of the one who is at home, who is welcoming a guest, a brief guest perhaps, maybe a long-lasting guest, maybe a final guest. Nevertheless, to be the host creates whatever spot you stand in as a true place, your essential, original home in a way. See how close that is to you are welcome here. That's taking the place of host, the role of host. And it doesn't have any opinions about what is being welcomed. Whatever is turning up in you at that moment, whatever is uppermost for you, whatever is piercing you at that moment, or what sound or smell or taste or touch is happening. You are welcome here is what you offer from your heart when you notice, when you feel its presence. Pema Chodron put it really stringently well. She said, nirvana, this wonderful other place, is just what is happening, minus our opinions about it. So there's the same sense of becoming like this. It is opinions, and that's a word that holds every single form of human resistance that keeps the world at bay and that keeps other beings at bay. Opinions. Consider how riven the world is by opinions right now. How baseless most of them appear to be, how evidence-free, how distorted, how angry, how furiously angry. the opinions are that sort of pelt us the moment you open the internet. You're pelted by these opinions. So the practice of don't believe it, whatever confronts you, don't believe it, as Linji also offered, is more and more important in our world and each moment of our lives. So this sense of an original home, of coming home to just where we are, it's established constantly, over and over, is continually returned to. This is practice. It's always being resumed. No one can pretend to live in a complete state of congruence at every point. But everybody can aim our hearts towards turning up to that as much as we can. Because, why? Well, a student once asked John Tarrant, it's more like a statement than a question, but he said it feels like there's an incredible price to pay for not being with what is. And John said, well, the price for not being with what is that you don't get as much life. You know, we are cutting our lives short, cutting them to a small shape. We're actually foregoing life, in fact. We're standing apart from it, like that character in one of the James Joyce stories in Dubliners. I forget his name, but Mr. So-and-so always lived about 7 inches off from his life. You've probably felt that in yourself, that 7-inch distance. Okay, so the state of equanimity doesn't have any opinions about someone called me within the exigency of just what is happening. And having no opinions about me is very close to the experience of waking up itself. There's no place for opinions to lodge there. If we have seen through this dream of a self, when it becomes transparent to what really is here, this, it is a kind of rapturous state. It's appropriate to call, because there is no me, a rapture. And it's called waking up, where we are. And it doesn't hold itself apart from life, and death is a grave matter, not in the least. But what it also does is rejoin. Life and death is the great matter that we are here to explore, to realize for ourselves. If you think of those evening words that the Jisha calls out into the room in the evening, life and death is a grave matter. Notice it's a singular grave matter. It's not two grave matters. Life and death joined together is a grave matter. All things pass quickly away. We can confirm this with every breath that we draw. She goes on to say, each of us must be completely alert, never neglectful, never indulgent. What might you be indulging? Could it be opinions? That is the ultimate kind of indulgence. That push away where you are, that will not concede itself to what is happening right now. So this is a very sort of direct kind of statement, you know. Don't take it so easy that you let the days go by. You know, you must value your time. That's what the Jisha is saying. Now, at the same time, what these words land in is the mortal human body. that we occupy. We are mortal human bodies. And luckily, there is no other known place of awakening. You must awaken in a mortal human body. So you can value the fire in those words. Grave matter, a matter of grave gravity, grave, weighty importance. Then it was discovered a while back that the words as written down to be the evening words each night was a mishearing. That the person who originally offered them as a version of what the Buddha is said to have said, these are the words of the Buddha, is actually life and death is the great matter. All things pass quickly away. Each of us must be completely alert, never neglectful, never indulgent. So the great matter is this state of, how do we describe it? The vast, open, empty, round, luminously intelligent state. Prajna paramita, the great force or intelligence of emptiness, of seeing emptiness, seeing with the eyes of emptiness, seeing with the eyes of seamlessness. No other. So, another thing that Linji is one of the fiery characters of the Tang dynasty. He tended to hit people a lot. We don't indulge in that. Possibly it's why we're taking so long to wake up. And hits people. Horse hits people. But Linji said this, when the heart is not anxious, the 10,000 things are without blame. Now the 10,000 things means what is, each thing, the 10,000 petals on the tree, on the bushes out there. 10,000 is a way of saying all that is, each particle of matter. So this, the reality we're in, is without blame. When the heart is not anxious, when the heart is not held back, then things come forward. It's intimate, intimacy. Dogen said, when you go out with the mind of taking hold of the 10,000 things, they retreat. They turn away from you. When you allow the 10,000 things to come forward and confirm the self, that is realization. And what do they confirm? They confirm that the whole world is you. Yet you keep thinking it is something else. The whole world is you. Look, it's an outrageous statement and a wondrous invitation to arrive where you are. So, coming back to Anasphere, I like the fact that she was such a kind of joyful, playful, plangent, honest, sort of forensically honest human being. But this poem is actually referring to her time when she was at the Warsaw Ghetto, which is a poignant thing to even mention right now, when we know that Gaza, right now, is like a rerun of the Warsaw Ghetto. Big, big, big time. Astonishing that it could repeat in that fashion that it's repeating. But at the time, she was a nurse's aide during the Warsaw Uprising, during wartime in the Warsaw Ghetto. And this was, of course, a time of, like the one we're beginning to be in, a time of great convulsion, vast convulsion in the world, far beyond any kind of choice. Nobody chooses it, but it leaves us with no choice but to be exactly with what is, and if possible, to meet it with the mind of equanimity, which does not look for good and bad, but looks to share the good, to recognise and share the good. Not claiming it, sharing it. And here she is sharing it. The poem is called I Carried Bedpans. Okay, I worked as an orderly at the hospital without medicine and water. Does this sound a little like Gaza? I carried bedpans filled with pus, blood and faeces. I loved pus, blood and faeces. They were alive, like life. And there was less and less life around. When the world was dying, I was only two hands handing the wounded a bedpan. I can hear our great vows, the many beings are numberless. I vow to wake to them. When we say save, that character can translate as wake. I vow to wake to them. I vow to wake to the fact they are no other. I can hear, in this poem, I can hear her laying down her sense of self for life itself. And poet Rilke said, life is always right. Life is always right. How can we ignore that so profoundly and put life at risk? And life is always right is also saying don't long for another one because this one is so rich and so compelling no matter what's happening now. Another poet, Tony Hoagland, who was dying of cancer when he said these words from the hospital where he was there for the last time. He said, we'd give anything for the life we have. We do have to give everything for the life we have. But look how much we're stranded on the side of we'd give anything for the life we have. How strange that we stand apart from it to that bizarre extent. So I think that's a kind of secret whisper inside the very act of coming to a place like this, coming to a cushion to sit down on a daily matter in a daily way, to say, I offer myself up. I offer myself. Without agenda, without something to attain. It's far more something to let go of, a little more to let go of. To become more skilled in let go, relinquish, offer. So getting back to Linji's words, if wherever you are, you take the role of host, then whatever spot you stand in will be a true one. This comes from a longer statement where he said it like this, followers of the way. Remember he used to hit people, leave that alone. Okay. The teaching of the Buddhas calls for no special undertakings, just act ordinary. No need to try to do anything in particular. Move your bowels, piss, get dressed, eat your meal, and when you're tired, sleep. People who try to do something about what is outside themselves are nothing but blockheads. There is nothing outside. If, wherever you are, you take the role of host, then whatever spot you stand in will be a true one. So Zen is so full of this quiet sense of this, right where we are, this quiet, ordinary happiness. The poems of Ryokan are full of it. And they include difficult things, lice in the bed, thieves coming in the middle of the night to take what he's got, he's got nothing left. The thieves have already taken pretty much everything. So he rolls himself slightly off his bed pad so that can be taken. Because that person obviously needed it, you know. So that's Ryokan. Basho, you know, wrote of the deep sort of rightness somehow of sleeping in straw in a stable and hearing the piss of the horse hitting the straw nearby. Not rejecting anything. One of his poems is Cold Autumn Rain, No Rain Hat. So, cold autumn rain. Wear that as a raincoat. And perhaps I'll just mention something that the Dalai Lama said about this matter of suffering. He was asked, how do you overcome suffering? Isn't our path about overcoming suffering? He said, wait a minute. In Buddhism, suffering is not overcome by leaving pain behind. Suffering is overcome by bearing pain with the other for the sake of the other, so-called. Can you hear how that is already dissolving into there is no other? And this is the ground, the very expression of compassion. Nobody is doing compassion. Someone is giving way completely to the other in a way that is for the sake of the other. And when we have our vow to save the many beings, I sometimes think, well, if you hold yourself towards the many beings in that fashion, live your life towards them in that fashion, in a way becoming more deeply aware that there is no profound difference, no me, no you, just me and you, the deepest level, then the many beings make sure of you. They carry out the vow. You just stand back. Vow to save the many beings. You allow the many beings to save in all directions. So, perhaps I'll end with very much in the spirit of that sense of bodhisattva, there is no other. Making the act of saving the other as natural as becoming a little more comfortable yourself. In fact, allowing something more comfortable to be all around, allowing healing to proceed most naturally. So, another poem of Anasphere was her poem Thoughts of a 14-Year-Old Nurse. Again, she's referring back to that time of her life. And this was her thoughts, or the way she put them into a poem at a later age. If all the bullets in the world hit me, then they couldn't hit anybody else. And let me die as many times as there are people in the world so that they wouldn't have to die, even the Germans. And let nobody know that I died for them, so that they wouldn't be sad. You can't get much more host than that, can you? I'll leave you with just two more of her poems. They're very tiny, and in a way they sum up the whole of this ability to live straight on to life with preparedness to risk love and to wear the pain of it. She actually said about poetry, a poet must be as sensitive as an aching tooth. So you can hear her willingness towards the pain that is also the very current of aliveness in the world, and of connection, and of the undoing of self and other. So this one's called I Am Filled with Love. I am filled with love as a great tree with the wind, as a sponge with the ocean, as a great life with suffering, as time with death. I am filled with love as a great tree with the wind, as a sponge with the ocean, as a great life with suffering, as time with death. And finally, just so that you can have that sense of the path never ends, the path goes on forever. Luckily, it's never going to come to the end and you say, that's done. So this one is called That Which Is Most Important. Were I able to shut my eyes, ears, legs, hands, to hear the echo of the Heart Sutra there, and walk into myself for 1,000 years, perhaps I would reach, I do not know its name, what matters most. So, keep on walking into and right through the self. It is the open gate to all that is, and what matters most. So thank you for your trouble.